What has changed is that I think we've gotten more clarity around what is a conflict of interest. So there was a period way back when there really were very few policies, and then people didn't really have the guidance or took advantage of the situation, whatever it might be, and there were challenges of things that happened. They were big cases, and then some of the universities became very, very strict about it, okay? And so then there was a period of time where it was like, you never talk to anyone in industry. You never look at them, you never talk to them, you never do anything. And that was the environment I came into Penn with. And that was really challenging for me because I found the first cases of kids who die from airbags. Who was going to use that information? It was just going to be people who make airbags or car manufacturers or whoever. I had to talk to industry. So what I did in my career is I started figuring out, how do you set up the right contract so that I have the academic freedom to publish, but we are working with industry because they're the effector arm of our work, right? So it needed to happen in order for me to get the right information about the airbags, but also to actually make a difference. And so then I moved from there into starting to really think about, what does that balance look like, and how do I keep that balance so I'm constantly moving the field forward? And so I developed methods for doing that, and then moved it into actually an industry university cooperative research center through the National Science Foundation, which actually is much more comfortable with these partnerships because it's much more technology driven, right? So I learned a lot from that. I had a lot of experience, and then I moved that forward. And I do believe that some of the things that I did opened it up for other people because I was setting precedents of how this worked. Just the other day, somebody came to me about how can she set up an industry university cooperative research center to study a rare disease. So I think that people are really understanding that if we don't make the partnerships with the people who are going to bring this to lots and lots of people, then why are we doing the research, right? It's not enough to just publish it, because what I publish is based on a very, often controlled situation. Once it goes to someone who's actually out in the field delivering that, you're going to learn a lot more insights about what was wrong about your initial assumptions, what was wrong about your initial research, and your research gets more fruitful, more rich, more robust, and they, by having that partnership, can make things even better. If I can't shop, I'm not going to buy, okay? So that's for customers, but it also is true for policymakers, it's true for all kinds of people, that if you completely do everything related to your randomized trial and then you lump some data on someone's lap, the likelihood that they're going to implement that is pretty low, okay? Especially when it's like a new program or something like that. And there's a lot of frustration on the staff, on the parts of both sides, that why didn't you come to me sooner? If you'd just done it this way, or you asked it this way, or you included this information, I could have easily adapted that, right? So what I learned very early on is you don't have the outside entity that may have a conflict. You don't have them involved in the final review, in the final results, any of that kind of thing. But holy cow, you should definitely ask them early on, what data should I collect while I'm doing it? How do you see this might go forward so that I can keep that in mind as I'm designing? And that is so much more helpful in something that is well known called the Valley of Death, right? You have research resources and operations resources, and there's this big chasm that takes you from one to the other. And so what you need to do is push your research closer and have the technology pool so that you're not so far apart. So this valley of death, where good ideas go to die, becomes a challenge basin, right? It's something a little bit smaller. And the way you do it is by just having that conversation beforehand, having a sense, who is actually going to do this next, right? Because otherwise, why are you doing it? You might be thinking about this experiment, this thing, but what are the next steps? And what other partners do you want to have who they themselves can bring expertise into this initial project to have it have more legs, something more robust. So for example, with our virtual driving test work, I've started to bring neuroscience in it, starting to think about how can this go to that next level to be able to start thinking about how your neurocognitive development or impairment affects your driving, and then what does your driving say about your neurocognitive development impairment. That's really different from what I was doing now, but it's the idea of always being at the cutting edge of where it's headed, and it's often confusing, but not impossible to add another little piece to it so it stays cutting edge. Because your role as an academic, so you may have said, I've noticed that this is a problem and here's a solution, but that problem may not be recognized. It may not be something that someone says, I need to do. So like, for example, distracted driving is a really big societal problem, but for an individual, I don't think they would come out and buy something from you so they're less distracted, right? It's not like a desirable thing to do. There might be other ways to get around it, but you need to know that there is what's called a product market fit. And the way you get to that is by validating that this really is a problem. And there are three ways to be looking at it. Is it such a big problem that it's like antibiotics? Is it just a problem like aspirin, like it's nice to have, but I'm in pain, so I really want it? Or is it vitamins? Like people will tell you, oh, that's a great idea, da da da. You want to know, is it so important that you need it tomorrow